I want to spend just a few minutes with you to talk a little bit about us, about our assembly here in Manitoba, about our conference here in Manitoba, some of the things that we are working on, some of the dreams that we have, some of the directions that we feel God is calling us to undertake. And I want to begin by talking about assembly itself, this gathering that we have once a year. I had a number of comments from people today that said, hey, I looked at the agenda for the conference and I realized quickly that business was just a little bit at the end of assembly. And I know that for some that's a great thing, and for others it's like, wait a second, we are community and we need to decide things in community. So let me talk to you a little bit about the thinking behind assembly. I believe that we can take this opportunity as a group of churches to make assembly a time of resourcing the church, to really talk about the issues that are affecting us, to really encourage each other, to learn from each other, and then to take something practical back to our ministries and to our congregations. We have something that I call as critical mass. We have 40 churches in Manitoba. And if we were to say, hey, let's take this opportunity and once a year gather together to just worship the Lord of the universe, to pray together and to learn, I think assembly will be something amazing. This is what we are trying to do, the direction that we're trying to go with assembly. I hope that you have enjoyed your weekend so far. I hope that you have time of praying with each other. Wasn't it beautiful that we just didn't talk about prayer, but we also stopped to pray? Wasn't it awesome to hear all those voices? I was praying and I have to say, I was distracted because I could hear all those voices. And inside of my heart, I was saying, isn't it beautiful that all of those voices are being lifted up before the presence of God? So we did that in community. So I want to encourage you, pastors and leaders, to begin to think of this weekend in the first weekend of March, the first Friday and Saturday of March, and think, how can I motivate my church to engage in this? We want to open assembly to more than delegates. We did this year. And there was good response. And we want to encourage you. I want to see the day when people will say to each other, you haven't been to assembly? You don't know what you're missing, because there's something good happening. So I want to encourage you to begin to think about assembly from those perspectives. The other part is, then we ask ourselves, what happens to the decisions that we used to make together? Somebody said to me, there's something very wrong with us because we don't come together to make decisions anymore. And it seems like everything is so packaged together, and by the time we'll come in, we just nod our heads and then we'll go home. I heard you, and I think it is important for us to make decisions together. It's part of our DNA. It's part of who we are. But I think there is a better way of doing that than to do it during assembly time. I think a more productive way of making decisions is to participate in special interest groups. Those areas that God is tugging at your heart, those areas that God is calling you and giving you a dream for, those areas to engage with it. And during the next few years, we're going to have many times when we can gather to plan together, to develop a plan. I'll give you a few examples. In the next little while, I want to call a group of those that are interested in talking about ministry among our First Nations people. I want us to spend some time praying, dreaming together, talking about what do we need to do among this large community that we have here in Manitoba. Then we're going to pray that God is going to give us directions. Then we're going to sit down and write some plans of where we could go. And I think that's how we can participate together in dreaming and planning. Just recently, we called together a group of people that are interested in conflict resolution, and how do we walk into conflicted spaces, and how do we resource the church in areas of conflict. And this group, and I sat there for 2 days. I never knew that I could sit for 2 days listening about how to deal with conflict, and I could have gone for another 5 days. I'm telling you. I was so energized at the end. I said, that's it? The time is gone? I want to talk a bit more about this. There are so many great ideas, so many great insights, so many biblical, godly view of how do we deal with conflict, that I left there thinking, boy, God has gifted us with great men and women of faith. So that's how we're going to engage, or how a more productive way of engaging together is by picking those areas where God has given you a gift for, or a call for, or a dream for. And it might be inner city, it might be First Nations, it might be new immigration, it might be conflict resolution, it might be the preaching of the gospel, all of those areas, or theological matters. And then we can engage and make those decisions together. Another quick example, you have in your binders a letter from Roger Friesen. You know that with the call to have an executive director, we made some transitions and some changes in the office, and one of them is that we transitioned Roger Friesen out of being the administrator of the conference to become the director of congregational services. What does that mean? It means that Roger is now working, and he is doing some incredible work in preparing a resource library for churches in areas of HR and church systems and a number of different things. If that's your heart, there is a letter of invitation for you to engage with him. He wants your opinion. He wants you to sit with him. He wants to connect with you. Where's Roger? Roger here somewhere? Roger? Probably outside still. But read that, and if that's your heart, connect with him, and then you can make the plans together. So my prayer is that we take this opportunity, this time of assembly, and we make assembly a great time of resourcing, celebration, prayer, telling our stories, hearing from each other's heart, and connecting to learn more about what God, the heart of God for us. In your binders also, you have something that we call a 5-year plan. And I'm just going to talk for a few more minutes, and I want to hear from you. I want to hear your opinions. I'm pretty sure you read it, and I want to hear what you thought of it. But let me just quickly go through some things that you will see on the 5-year plan. You'll find the 5-year plan on page 15 and on of your binder. During the first year, when I came into the job, I really didn't do a lot in terms of make any changes. But what I did is I talked to a lot of people. I visit pretty much every single church we have. I think there are 5 churches that I haven't gone to either preach at, visit with, and about the same amount of pastors that I haven't really connected with in a one-to-one basis. But I spent my year talking, the whole year spending time with pastors, thanking them for lunch, asking them, what is the conference for you? What does it mean to be part of this conference? What is good about it? What is bad about it? Tell me, where can we improve? I have 3 little books of one-liners or two-liners that I heard out of these conversations. I connected with the leaders of our agencies, and I talked to them. Spent time with Gerald, the CMU, a number of times. We were connected with a Canadian conference a number of times. We connected with FLN and with MBCI, and we just talked a bit about how can we work closely together. Visit our camp, connected up north a bit as well, to see how we can work together. Here's what I heard. Other than just visiting with pastors, we asked Dave Balzer to join us in our team as a consultant, a communications consultant. And the first thing we asked him to do is to develop a survey that wouldn't take too long. And he said it would take 5 minutes, and this is exactly what it took. A 5-minute survey that went for leaders of churches that they will fill out and tell us what did they hearing from the assembly, from our conference, I should say. And here's what we heard back. We heard confusion and lack of understanding. We heard that we need to have a clear message, and we didn't have that. We had many people with many different opinions of what conference is all about. We needed to have a clear understanding of what the mandate of the office of the conference is. So we began to work, the second year, we began to work at developing that and working through that. The first thing I think that we needed to understand is what is the mandate of the office of the conference. At one point in time, it was clear. We were a managerial office. We had agencies to manage. We had things that we need to keep, we were about managing the resources that the conference had, that the group of churches had. Now, most of our agencies have grown to a point where they are now managing their own resources, and they are growing beyond what we could ourselves manage. And they are doing an excellent job, and God is using them incredibly. So for a time, we were confused about what is our position? What do we do as a conference? What's the point of even having a conference? So we needed to understand our mandate. So by talking to pastors, we realized that our mandate, it's really not to create a mission for the church, but it is to resource the church as it achieves the mission that God has given to the church. So out of that, the idea that the office exists, that the office of the conference exists to equip, to resource, and to inspire the church to accomplish its God-given mission. This conference, for example, it's a good example of where we want to go. To equip is to train, is to bring people that could train us in certain areas. Is to be people that could teach us certain things. This assembly was about a prayer. So we look for people that are practicing prayer, that they were not just teachers of just didn't know the logistics of it. They didn't just know the verses about prayers, but they were practicing prayer. Those were the people that we wanted to bring to equip the church. To resource, in my opinion, is to offer the church tools. Tangible tools, something you can take it in your hand and take it back and say, I can do this in my own life. I can do this in my ministry. I can do this. During this assembly, you had a number of workshops where you were offered ways and tools on how to develop a prayer ministry for yourself and for your congregation. You probably have handouts and papers that it can help you to lead that. But more than that, we try to connect you with a prayer current that has tremendous amount of resource for your church, for your ministry. And it can help equip your church in the area of prayer. So if we take this one segment, prayer, and we can do this, now this is what we want to go with the conference. We want to be a place where we can equip, resource, and inspire. If you were here last night and this morning, both as we heard John Smatt and then we heard from Gordon Fleming, I don't think that there wasn't one person here that wasn't inspired. Last night I sat over there as I helped with PowerPoints and I heard John Smatt. I felt like, God, I need more of you. And I left here being challenged and I was inspired. And I hope you were inspired this week. I just sat with somebody at the lunch, and this person said, I was at a workshop. And boy, I am just kind of tired of crying. I was crying. We were praying for somebody, and we were crying. There's this kind of inspiration that takes place. This is what we want to be about. We want to equip, resource, and inspire. How are we going to do that? Well, we want to do that a number of different ways, but we want to pick two very important segments for us. One is leaders development, the other one is church health. And what we didn't want to do is that we didn't want to just develop new programs and come up with new programs, and this is our program for leaders development or leadership development, or this is our program for church health, and here it is, because there are different churches at different stages of life. So what we did is we decided that it was a better approach would be to look at this from a lifespan type of development. There are different churches and different leaders at different stage. You know, and for us to be able to equip and resource those churches where they are, it's important. So if you're a pastor just going into your first assignment, your first church, and you're a single staff member of a church, and you are doing secretarial work plus preaching plus visiting plus doing all of that stuff, you have different needs than a pastor that now has 9 people on staff. And it's managing what's happening around. So these are very different needs. And we don't want to just bring a program and say, here's what we came up with. We want to go and search for what's best for that segment that you as a leader are experiencing, or that your church is experiencing. So during this year, we'll be developing a new website, new slogan, a new logo, something that will just bring us together and give us a clear message of what conference is all about. We're also talking about something called a ministry exploration program, and this is in a talk phase, and that is kind of a 12-month period of time when young adults age probably 18 to 30, the feel that God is calling them into ministry, but at the same time they have to make decisions, professional decisions, that if we were able to partner with different agencies and different people, that we could develop something that these people could spend 12 months of their life exploring what ministry would be about. Exploring what is the call of God in their lives. Living together, learning together, praying together, and then spending times perhaps in some, during action, during summer, during Soar Heartland, whatever it is that we can find opportunities to engage our young people into, that they can then experience ministry. So at the end of that 1 year, they will have a feel for what God is calling them to do. It could be that at the end of the year, as C2C and as Pray Together, it could be that at the end of the year, the young couple, the young person says, I just feel, I went overseas and I went there, but I just feel that God is calling me to plant a church there. And then we'll be able to say, okay, now we go into Gordon's lap and he will take you from here. And so those kinds of things I think are very important. I just finished teaching a module at Seoul, a School of Urban Leadership, and I talk to young people at the age around 20-year-olds, and I hear all the time, we are confused. We know we love God. We know that God wants something out of us. We just don't know what it is. We just don't know what it is. So it is our hope that we're going to be working in those areas of trying to help the next generation, raising a next generation of leaders. I think that that's part of the call of the conference. It's not that we just wait, but we help develop a next generation of leaders. There are many other things I could talk to you about, but I want to just give you a glimpse of where my heart's been. I've been broken and weeping for our First Nations people. I don't know why. It just somehow, out of the blue, one morning, I just felt God saying, I'm going to put this in your heart, and I'm not going to take it away, and I want you to pray daily for this. And I want you to feel their pain, and I want you to weep for them, and I want you to feel, because there's something that I want to do about this. So I want to invite you, the MB Church here in Manitoba, to pray with me for First Nations people. What God can do among them. The restoration, the rebuilding, just an inundation of God's grace among them. And I feel it that God is at a verge of doing that, but we need to pray. Pray that God is going to send us the right people. It takes the right people to minister to First Nations people. So that we will pray that God is going to send us them. And that God is going to send us idea. And Harold sent me, Harold Jensen, send me a letter outlining some ideas, and I sat down and I read and I said, what a beautiful ideas. And the ideas are there. God is already giving ideas on how we can do this. So I invite you to dream with me, to pray with me, to engage with me, and let's begin to work towards bringing Christ to a whole people group. Pray for Walls of Freedom. Our New Year's church, and Jim and Jackie are here. They have about 600 families on their visitation list. And they have a group of volunteers that they visit these homes all the time. Lots of the people that they visit are either new immigrants or First Nations people. And Jim was saying, just in 1 week, I think it was 1 week span, right, Jim, where you had the 2 funerals. One young lady who just 17 years old who went to some birthday party or something, drunk too much and died the next day. And I think that there was a suicide as well. And Jim is usually the guy that gets called to do these funerals. God has given him some influence around the core of our city. So let's pray for them. Let's engage with them, and let's help them in the ministry that God has called them to do. There are many other things that you will hear throughout the year. In my office, it's always open to you. Come and see me anytime. I had somebody come in last week and said to me, I need to talk to you. And this person came in and sat down in my office, and at first I thought, there's something wrong, there's got to be something wrong. Why would anybody want to come and see me if there's nothing wrong? So as they sat there and they asked me some questions, and then they said, I just want to encourage you. I just felt like coming here and pray for you and encourage you. So if you come to encourage me, or if God has given you some ideas, or even if you feel like, perhaps there are some things that we should do different, I would love to hear from you. We are in this ministry together. So I want to hear from you. If there are any comments, any ideas, any things, if you think I'm out to lunch, let me know. The microphones are on. Please come up to the microphones, and it's a time for us to engage.